You know, people always say blood is thicker than water. That family comes first. That you should always help your own. I believed that for 60 minus for years of my life. I believed it so deeply that when my daughter needed help, I didn't even hesitate. I just handed over my keys and said, take it for as long as you need. But here's what I learned the hard way. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones who will hurt you deepest. And sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to get smarter than they think you are. My name is Alice, and this is the story of how I gave my daughter my car, and how she gave me the biggest life lesson I never wanted to learn. I'm a 60 minus for minus year minus old widow living alone in Davenport, Iowa. Same little one minus story house I've called home for over 3 decades. My husband Rick passed away 13 years ago from a sudden heart attack. One night we were watching Jeopardy together, laughing at the contestants who couldn't get the easy ones. The next morning he was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just silence where his snoring used to be. Since then, I've managed just fine on my own. I never remarried. Rick was it for me, you know. I keep busy with my garden, go to church on Sundays, cook simple meals, and live quietly on his pension and Social Security. I'm not rich, but I don't need much. I have 2 daughters. Georgia moved out of state a few years back, but she calls regularly and visits when she can. Then there's Natalie. She stayed here in town, lives just a few minutes away in one of those newer subdivisions with her husband Joel and their twin boys, Mason and Tyler. They're 10 years old, sweet kids who light up my world every time I see them. Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not some bitter old woman sitting around complaining about the younger generation. I don't keep score of every favor or expect constant gratitude. When my family needs something, I help. That's just who I am. That's how I was raised. You show up for your own, no questions asked. But apparently, that philosophy only works one way. Back in June, Joel and Natalie's car broke down. Their only vehicle, a black Ford Explorer, had transmission problems. Complete failure, according to the mechanic. Joel works over in Bettendorf, and Natalie's always driving the boys to baseball practice, doctor appointments, and all the activities that come with raising twins. Without a car, they were stuck. I heard about their situation through Georgia, actually. She called me one evening and mentioned that Natalie was stressed about being without transportation. I didn't wait for anyone to ask for help. I called Natalie immediately. You can use my car for now, I told her. It's just sitting in the driveway most days anyway. Are you sure, Mom? That's really generous of you. Of course, I'm sure. I'll be fine. The next morning, Joel showed up in my driveway. He didn't say thank you. Didn't make small talk. Just walked around my car, granted his approval, and drove off with my only set of keys. I watched him go, feeling good about helping out my family. I figured it would be a week or 2 while they sorted out their car situation. Well, 2 weeks turned into 3, then 5, then 7. No updates, no check minus-ins, no offers to bring the car by occasionally so I could run errands. Not even a simple "how are you doing" without it, Mom. I called twice and left polite messages. Natalie texted back once, still using it. Hope that's okay. Huge help. The way she phrased it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a statement. I didn't make a scene. I just quietly started figuring out the bus system. I hadn't been on public transportation since I was in my 40s, but I researched the routes online and adapted. What choice did I have? Then my back started acting up. I've had minor issues before, just the usual aches and pains that come with age. But this was different. A sharp shooting pain that started in my lower back and traveled all the way down my right leg to my heel. It was relentless. I couldn't sleep, could barely walk without wincing, and forget about bending over to pick anything up. I called my doctor, Dr. Martinez. He was concerned enough to order an MR immediately. Could be a herniated disc, he said. We need to see what's going on in there. The appointment was scheduled for 7:40-5 on a Wednesday morning at the imaging center across town. The only bus route that could get me there on time required leaving my house at 5:30-7 in the morning with the transfers. It was going to be rough, especially with my back in the condition it was in. So I thought maybe this one time I could ask for help. After all, they had my car. Surely they could spare 20 minutes to drive me to a medical appointment. I called Natalie on Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the MRI. Hey honey, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I've got an MRI early next Wednesday morning. Do you think you or Joel could give me a ride? I'm having trouble with my back, and the bus route is pretty complicated. There is a long pause. Then I heard Joel in the background, speaking louder than necessary, as if he wanted me to hear every word tell her to take the bus like everyone else. My heart sank. But I waited, hoping Natalie would speak up, would show some compassion for her mother who was clearly in pain. Instead, she said, "We're kind of busy, Mom. I have a PTA thing that morning, and Joel's working." That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, how are you feeling? No attempt to find an alternative solution. Just cold dismissal. I didn't argue. I said okay and hung up the phone. But my hand was shaking when I put it down, and it wasn't from the pain in my back. It was from the realization that my own daughter, driving my own car, couldn't be bothered to help me get to a medical appointment. That Wednesday morning, I got up at 4:40-5. My back felt like it was on fire. I dressed slowly, took some Tylenol, and made my way to the bus stop in the dark. The street twilight was flickering, casting eerie shadows on the empty sidewalk. I stood there with my cane, gripping it with both hands to stay upright. The bus came 10 minutes late. I missed my first transfer because it was too crowded to accommodate someone with mobility issues. I had to wait another 20-5 minutes for the next one. I finally arrived at the imaging center at 7:50-5, sweating and pale from pain and exhaustion. The technician took one look at me and asked if I was all right. I told him I was just tired. The MRI revealed exactly what drove. Martinez suspected a bulging disc pressing directly on my sciatic nerve. That explained the excruciating pain shooting down my leg. He recommended physical therapy and mentioned that I might need a minor procedure if conservative treatment didn't work. I texted Natalie later that day to update her on the diagnosis. Her response was a thumbs minus up emoji and "hope you feel better soon." That's when it really hit me. They were using me. Using my car, using my patience, using my unconditional love. And they didn't care about the cost to me, physically or emotionally. I had given them something significant without hesitation. When I needed something small in return, they couldn't even pretend to try. But instead of getting angry, I got quiet. I got clear. And then I got smart. I called my neighbor's son, Travis. He's 20-2, works part-time for a towing company while taking community college classes. Good kid, always waves when he sees me working in the garden. I explained the situation calmly and asked if he'd be willing to help me reclaim my property. He didn't even hesitate. "Of course, Miss Alice. Just say when." While I waited, I took care of some paperwork. I filed for a duplicate title since Rick's name was still on the original, but as his surviving spouse, I had the legal right to reissue it in my name only. I also called the police non-minus emergency line and filed an unauthorized use report just to have everything documented properly. 3 weeks after my MRI, on a Sunday night at 11:40-5, Travis pulled into Natalie's neighborhood with his tow truck. I stayed home. He sent me a picture once my car was hooked up and ready to go. There it's at in their driveway like it belonged to them, like they earned it somehow. He had it back in my driveway by 12:30 in the morning. When I got in the next day to inspect it, the car reeked of fast food and there was something sticky on the back seat where the boys had obviously spilled a drink. There were goldfish crackers in the door pockets and Natalie had left a half-empty Starbucks cup in the console. But what really got to me was the casual disrespect it represented. They treated my car like their personal property with no regard for the fact that it was a generous loan. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, focused, and determined. I found some paper and wrote a simple note, which I taped inside the glove compartment where I knew they'd eventually find it. "I gave you my car. You gave me disrespect. This isn't how you treat someone who raised you. It's mine again. Don't call me unless it's to apologize." The next morning, the call started. First Joel, then Natalie, then multiple texts. Joel's message was predictably aggressive. "Did you seriously tow our car?" Natalie's was more manipulative. "What the hell, Mom?" I waited until afternoon to respond with a single text. "It was never your car. You never even said thank you." They stopped texting for a few days. I thought maybe, just maybe, they were reflecting on their behavior. I was wrong. That Friday, someone rang my doorbell. When I opened the door, it wasn't Natalie or Joel. It was a woman I recognized from the boys' school, another PTA mom with Mason and Tyler sitting in her back seat. "Hi, I'm just dropping the boys off," she said cheerfully. "Natalie said you were watching them tonight." That was news to me, but I wasn't about to take it out on my grandsons. I took the boys in, made them grilled cheese sandwiches and apple slices, and we played cards at the kitchen table. They were sweet as always, chattering about school and their baseball team. I didn't say a word about their parents. Natalie came to pick them up at 8:10 that evening. No apology, no explanation for the surprise babysitting duty. Just I hope you're not planning to keep acting like this, Mom. It's not a good look. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter I'd written on my computer at the library, with Travis helping me format it properly. This is not about the car. It's about how I'm treated. I deserve respect. I deserve to be asked, not expected. I won't be your emergency plan, your backup sitter, or your silent ADM. If you want a relationship, it'll be mutual from now on. She read it without saying a word, then left with the boys. The week after I reclaimed my car, things got eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, not even a visit from Mason and Tyler. I thought maybe Natalie was finally processing what had happened, maybe cooling off and preparing to apologize. I was wrong again. The silence wasn't peace. It was preparation for something much worse. That Friday, I was at Heimgenal's V picking up groceries when I ran into Sheila, one of Natalie's neighbors. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. "Oh, hey, Alice," she said awkwardly. "I heard you've been under the weather." "A bit," I replied. "Just back problems." She hesitated, then said, "Natalie mentioned you were having memory issues and struggling with your temper." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" She gave me a tight, uncomfortable smile and wheeled her cart away quickly. Memory issues. Struggling with my temper. I don't forget things. I've managed all my bills, appointments, and household responsibilities completely independently since Rick passed away 13 years ago. But now Natalie was out there planting seeds of doubt about my mental capacity, making me sound unstable and unreliable. The implications hit me immediately. This wasn't just about being upset over the car. She was actively trying to undermine my reputation, to make people think I couldn't take care of myself. When I got home, I found a letter in my mailbox that made my blood run cold. It was from the Office of Adult Protective Services, stating that they had received a concerned tip about my well-minus being and were requesting a home visit to assess potential self-minus neglect or confusion in managing basic needs. I sat down right there on my porch steps, my heart pounding. She had actually done it. My own daughter had called the authorities and suggested I was mentally incompetent. They came the following Wednesday. A kind woman named Denise who clearly had her official checklist to work through. She examined the food in my kitchen, checked my bathroom for safety modifications, and then asked a key question: "Has anyone been taking advantage of you lately?" I told her everything. Not just about the car situation, but the entire pattern of behavior. The way Joel spoke to me with casual disrespect. The way Natalie expected me to provide babysitting services with no notice or discussion. The way she'd screamed at me last Thanksgiving when I brought a store-minus bot pie instead of baking from scratch, as if my contribution wasn't good enough. Denise took extensive notes. Before she left, she said something that validated what I'd been feeling. "You seem very capable, Ms. Riley. I don't see any signs of neglect or confusion. However, I will be filing a report that someone in your family may be attempting to manipulate your independence." That phrase hit hard. Not because she was wrong, but because hearing it said out loud by a professional made it real. Manipulation. That's exactly what this was. Quiet, polite control disguised as concern, escalating the moment I dared to push back. The next day, I received a text from Natalie: "You didn't have to turn APS on us." That was low. I responded, "You called them." Her reply: "They just learned the truth." She didn't text back after that, but 2 days later, the boys showed up at my door again. This time, Joel dropped them off with no warning whatsoever. "I've got work," he muttered, not even looking at me. "Natalie's at some yoga thing." I almost said no. Almost told him that unannounced babysitting wasn't part of our arrangement anymore. But those boys aren't responsible for their parents' behavior, and I love them unconditionally. We made mac and cheese together, and they told me that Joel had yelled at them the night before when they asked when they could visit me again. Later that evening, while they were brushing their teeth, I happened to look out my front window and saw Joel's truck parked on the corner with the lights off. Just sitting there, watching my house. I pulled the curtain shut, suddenly understanding that this had escalated beyond mere disrespect. This was intimidation. The next morning, I went out to check my car and something felt wrong. I don't know what instinct made me pop the hood, since I know very little about engines. But I knew immediately what I wasn't seeing. The battery was completely gone. Clean removal, no damage to the surrounding components. Professional job. I called Travis immediately. He came over within an hour and confirmed what I already suspected. Yeah, they took the battery. Probably the good wiper blades too. These are dry-minus rotted pieces of junk. I stared at the empty space where my battery used to be and felt something click into place inside my mind. They wanted to play games with my property, my independence, my mental health. Fine. I could play games too. But I was going to play much smarter than they expected. I filed another police report providing Joel's name and address. I even supplied security footage from my neighbor's Ring camera. She was more than happy to help once I explained what was happening. But I wasn't finished. I called our family lawyer. Rick and I had used Mr. Halverson for years, and though he's retired now, his daughter runs the practice. I asked her to help me establish formal legal boundaries, a and desist order for trespassing, and a complete revision of my will. I made sure that everything Natalie and Joel might have expected to inherit was redirected. The boys would still be taken care of through a trust, but their parents wouldn't see a single cent. Then I made one final call to Georgia. I hadn't told her much about what was happening because I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily. But when I explained everything minus every manipulative text, every lie told to neighbors, every attempt to undermine my independence minus, she went completely silent for a full minute. Finally, she said, "I'll be there Friday." She was flying in from Denver. And when she arrived, the whole situation was going to change dramatically. Georgia landed at the Quad City airport that Friday afternoon, exactly as she'd promised. The moment I saw her walking toward baggage claim, I broke down crying right there in the terminal. I hadn't cried in years. Not when Rick died, not when I had to sell his tools, not even when Natalie first started treating me with such casual cruelty. But seeing my daughter who still cared about me, who dropped everything to come help, it broke something loose inside my chest. She held me while I sobbed, not caring who was watching. "We're going to fix this, Mom," she whispered. "I promise you, we're going to fix this." Georgia has always had fire in her, even as a little girl. She never let anyone push her around, never accepted unfair treatment quietly. When she came to my house that evening, she walked through every room like a detective, checking locks, examining the garage, even crawling into the basement to look around. "This is more than just rude behavior," she said when she finished her inspection. "This is systematic control and isolation. The way they're treating you, Mom, is textbook elder abuse. And if they're stealing parts from your car, that's criminal behavior." I still didn't want to believe that Natalie could go that far. Georgia spent the next day organizing all my documentation, police reports, medical records, bank statements, the APS investigation results, everything. She made copies of everything and created a timeline of events that painted a clear picture of escalating abuse. Then she asked me something unexpected. Did Dad ever have a safe deposit box? He did. I'd completely forgotten about it. We'd used it years ago when we were paying off the house, mostly for important documents and Rick's military service records. Georgia and I went to the bank that Monday morning to see what was still there. Inside the box were the things that changed everything. First, a copy of Rick's original will, handwritten and properly notarized, but never updated. It clearly stated that if anything happened to him and I passed away before our daughters, the house and assets would be split evenly between them minus, but only if both daughters demonstrated what he called mutual respect and contribution to family care. Second, there was a sealed envelope addressed to both my daughters, containing a note in Rick's distinctive handwriting. He must have written it during those months when his heart first started giving him trouble, but he never showed it to any of us. The note said, "If you're reading this, I'm gone and your mother needs you." She gave everything to this family minus her youth, her energy, her dreams. If you can't treat her with respect and dignity in her later years, you don't deserve what we built together. Simple as that. Georgia teared up reading it. I felt like Rick was still protecting me, even after all these years. We made copies of everything and went straight to see the lawyer. That same afternoon, Georgia drove me to an auto shop to have my car thoroughly inspected. The mechanic confirmed what we suspected. Joel hadn't just taken the battery. He'd also swapped out my good tires, putting them on his SUV and leaving me with two barely minus legal pieces of junk with almost no tread. "This is theft, plain and simple," the mechanic said. "You should definitely press charges." Back at home, Georgia sat down with me at the kitchen table and laid out a strategic plan. "We can keep reacting to what they do," she said, "or we can go on the offensive and take control of this situation." That's when I told her something I hadn't mentioned to anyone else, something that shifted the entire conversation. A few months before any of this card drama started, I had given Natalie limited access to one of my checking accounts. It was meant to help with emergency expenses for the boys minus school supplies, unexpected medical costs, things like that. Nothing major. I trusted her completely and told her to only use it if she absolutely had to. I pulled up the online statement and handed Georgia my laptop. She stared at the screen in silent fury for several minutes. 3 Amazon purchases totaling over $400. DoorDash charges every other day. Multiple trips to an expensive nail salon. And a payment to something called Kira Lux minus Joel's overpriced chiropractor. Over $1,100 gone in just 8 weeks. Georgia looked at me with a mixture of sadness and anger. Mom, that's financial abuse. Clear documented financial abuse. I nodded slowly. Deep down, I think I'd known. I just hadn't wanted to say it out loud, hadn't wanted to believe that my own daughter would steal from me. She called her lawyer that night not just to discuss pressing charges, but to prepare a restraining order and explore options for recovering the stolen money. Tuesday morning, Georgia and I went to the police station with everything documented and organized. This time, we weren't dealing with a single officer who might dismiss an elderly woman's complaints. We presented a comprehensive case missing car parts, unauthorized financial transactions, documented harassment, and attempted manipulation of social services. The detective listened carefully, took detailed notes, and told us we were absolutely doing the right thing by coming forward. That afternoon, we were served with legal papers. But they weren't from us minus they were from Natalie. She had filed a petition for guardianship. Of me. My own daughter was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the court documents that described me as no longer capable of independent decision, minus making and potentially a risk to herself and others. It felt like someone had dumped ice water down my spine. Georgia was pacing behind me, absolutely furious. This isn't about helping you or protecting you, she said. She wants control of everything. Your house, your money, your medical decisions, everything. She was right. This wasn't grief or concern or even anger about the car. This was a calculated power grab. Natalie had decided that if she couldn't manipulate me into compliance, she'd use the legal system to force me into submission. But she made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. She forgot that I was the woman who stayed up all night with her when she had the flu as a child, who worked double shifts when Rick got laid off so we could still afford her aunt's lessons, who taught her how to balance a checkbook, how to stand up for herself, how to be strong. She forgot that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. I didn't need to scream or throw things or make dramatic gestures. I just needed to be smarter than she thought I was. So that's exactly what I did. Georgia and I met with our lawyer the next morning and presented him with a comprehensive file, police reports about the car theft, bank statements showing financial abuse, photographs of damage to my vehicle, witness statements including testimony from neighbors, and most importantly, Rick's original will and the letter he'd written to our daughters. The lawyer reviewed everything carefully, leaned back in his chair, and said, "This is going to get ugly, but you're going to win." The court date was set for 2 weeks out. During that time, Natalie tried desperately to control the narrative. She posted on Facebook about how I was struggling mentally and how she was just trying to protect her mother from making bad decisions. She even claimed that I was being manipulated by out-minus state family members with questionable motives. Georgia saw the posts and didn't even blink. "Let her dig her hole deeper," she said. "We'll let the facts speak for themselves." We stayed quiet, didn't respond to her social media campaign, and focused on preparing our case. But the real breakthrough came 1 week before our court date. Georgia was doing some background research when she noticed something on Joel's social media. He had tagged himself at a car auction with a photo of himself standing next to a suspiciously familiar. The caption read, "Can't believe we got rid of that junker. This one's a real upgrade." Only that wasn't his new car in the photo. That was my car. Same distinctive dent on the rear driver's side door. Same license plate number that was blurred out, but still partially readable through the filter he'd used. Joel had tried to sell my car at a cash auction just 2 weeks before Travis towed it back to my driveway. Georgia took screenshots immediately and sent them to our lawyer. We had proof that they hadn't just been using my car as they had actively tried to dispose of it permanently while I was struggling to get to medical appointments on public transportation. The day of the hearing, Natalie showed up dressed like she was attending a funeral. All black clothing, hair pulled back severely, carrying tissues for the dramatic tears she planned to shed. Joel looked smug and overconfident, like he always does when he thinks he's about to get his way. I didn't dress dramatically. Just a simple cardigan and slacks. But I stood tall and spoke clearly when it was my turn. The judge reviewed all our evidence methodically. When he finished, he looked directly at Natalie and said, "Ma'am, your petition claims that your mother is incompetent and unable to make rational decisions. Yet the evidence shows that you and your husband made over $1,100 in unauthorized purchases from her account, attempted to sell her vehicle without her knowledge, removed parts from her car, and failed to report any of these actions to appropriate authorities. That's not concern for her welfare. That's exploitation." Natalie's face turned bright red. Joel whispered something to her angrily and she snapped back, "Shut up, Joel." Right there in open court in front of the judge. The judge immediately denied the guardianship petition. He also signed an emergency restraining order prohibiting Joel and Natalie from contacting me in any way for a minimum of 90 days. No phone calls, no surprise visits, no using the boys as messengers or intermediaries. Georgia filed a civil lawsuit on my behalf that same day for theft, elder abuse, and emotional distress. With all the evidence we gathered, the case was straightforward. The court ordered Natalie and Joel to repay $70 minus $200 in damages, covering stolen car parts and authorized charges, my therapy costs, and legal fees. They didn't have the money. So the court put a lien on their house. 2 weeks later, Joel was fired from his job at the car dealership. Apparently, his social media post about the auction violated the company's ethics policy, and he'd already been on thin ice for aggressive behavior with customers. Natalie's social circle turned cold too. Several people, including Sheila, found out what had really happened through public court records. One of them even posted a public apology to me on Facebook, saying she'd been misled about my mental state. Suddenly, Natalie wasn't the devoted daughter protecting her confused mother anymore. She was just a woman who had stolen from her own mother and gotten caught. As for Mason and Tyler, I made it clear from the beginning that they would never be punished for their parents' behavior. The judge allowed supervised visits at Georgia's request, and I got to see my grandsons every other weekend at her temporary rental house across town. One evening, Mason looked up from the card game we were playing and asked, "Grandma, why did Mommy say you were sick when you're not?" I smiled at his innocent question and said, "Sometimes grown minus-ups say things that aren't true when they don't want to admit they made mistakes." He nodded solemnly, like he understood more than a 10-year-old should have to. 6 months after I reclaimed my car, Georgia helped me make some major changes. We sold my old house and moved me into a smaller, more manageable home outside Bettendorf, closer to some cousins I'd lost touch with over the years. She helped me set up everything in a trust that couldn't be touched by anyone with questionable motives. I have a new bank account with better security, new locks on all my doors, a revised will that reflects my actual wishes, and most importantly, a new sense of peace about setting boundaries. I'm not the same woman I was a year ago. I'm stronger, wiser, and far less afraid to speak up for myself. Every time I get in my car minus the same car they tried to strip and sell minus, I smile a little. Because they thought they could walk all over a quiet widow who wouldn't fight back. Instead, I walked right into that courtroom and took back everything that was mine. Now I live quietly again, but this time it's by choice, with clear boundaries and self minus respect intact. And the next time someone tells me to take the bus like everyone else, they better hope I'm not the one behind the wheel. Because I've learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop being kind to people who don't deserve it. And I'm never going to forget that lesson again.